We would like to take you all on a far out journey deep into space, deep into Star Trek fandom. Are you willing to join us?
Join me and Sarah as we travel back in time to the 1960s and I experience Star Trek for the first time. It is a Star Trek deflowering. I'm being deflowered.
I've been a Trekkie for 30 years and I've never seen the entire original series. I'm going to have a lot of feelings, so sit back, kick back, and enjoy this journey. Listener discretion might be advised. All right. Well, before we really get into it, I think we should probably let listeners know what is this? What are they listening to? It's a brand new podcast on the Trek Geeks Podcast Network called Deflowered. Why
Yes.
don't you introduce people to who you are? They've heard my voice before, so let's start off with you, please.
Yeah, and I want you to promote your other podcasts that you do. But yes, I am Sophie. I met Sarah at a toy fair, purchasing her many amazing things that she makes. And yeah, so I'm originally from England, as you can probably hear from my accent, and I moved to Canada. I teach kids about puberty and growing up. My field, my career for many years has been in sexual health, and I'm a huge I don't know what you would say, geek, nerd. I don't know. I love everything. I'm a big Marvel fan, comic book fan, TV, cinema, but I have never watched Star Trek. So that's what this podcast is about. Sarah's deflowering me, and also you're kind of being deflowered because you haven't seen them all. So yeah.
It's true. It's absolutely true. And for those who may not know who I am, my name is Sarah, and I have been a member of the Trick Geeks Podcast Network for a few years now. I have a show with my best friend Haley. It's called Rewind, and we just talk trash and have fun and laugh about the next generation, the show that we kind of grew up on and bonded over. I've gotten a chance to work with Bill and Dan on Discovering Trek, Lower Decks, Enterprise with Casey Shafsky, and I've been looking for an excuse to finally give the original series, or as they call it on Lower Decks, these old scientists, show a good serious like watch. And so I figured, why not bring somebody in who's never seen it before? It adds to the conversation, and if I can create a new Trekkie who starts showing up at Star Trek conventions in Las Vegas, it's a total win, right?
Yes, yes, and I am completely fresh to it. I have seen the films. So the films with Simon Pegg, I'm a huge Simon Pegg fan, J.J. Abrams. And yeah, so I love the films, but that's all the knowledge that I have. One of my best friends is a Trekkie. My mum is a Trekkie, although I don't think she really remembers the episodes that well because she watched them when they aired. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm really honored to be here and I'm just, yeah, ready to get into it.
As we're recording today, I am fresh back from Star Trek Las Vegas convention in at the Rio August 2023, and what an experience that was. That was my 10th Star Trek Las Vegas, one of the busiest ones, one of the most jam-packed, action-packed. And I'm going to share some stories about it right
Please do.
now and over the next couple of recordings. So I'm going to fill you in on just kind of the day 1 and 2 of the whole ordeal. Day 1, I'm at the airport in Victoria. My flight's delayed an hour and 15 minutes. I'm stressing about getting my connection in Vancouver. And I'm sitting there just kind of like trying to wake up because it's 6 in the morning. And who do I see? I see Haley.
Oh
She's at the
my gosh.
airport with her partner John, and they're headed to Ottawa. So what a sign to see that there she is, my Trek partner in crime, seeing me
Wait,
off at the airport.
did you not
Um,
know that she was traveling that
I
day?
knew she was traveling, but I didn't know she was traveling that day. So it was a big surprise to look up and be like, "Oh my God, are you here to come with
Wow.
me to Vegas? Like, is this a surprise?" So that was awesome. everything went well with my flights. I arrived in Vegas at, like just after lunch, got checked in at the Rio. And on the first day, just with a drink in hand, I spot Bill and Dan and one of the Patreons, Chris, and they were hanging out, and I got big hugs. And then I got to run into my really good friend Amy, and then I got to run into a girl named Heather Marsh, who we've been online friends for probably 10 years. We haven't met in person.
Wow.
She's from Sudbury, Ontario, and she was there with her sister Jen. So that was super exciting that on day one, um, just being there before the convention starts, I ran into everyone I wanted to see, got into the vendor room to see where the booth for Trek Geeks was set up, and snagged a Trek Geeks pen, and just had a great start. Like, it was just a great start for the day. I was so tired though. I couldn't sleep because I was so excited. So I kind of woke up at like 2 a.m. and then got out of bed at 4 to get to the airport. So it was a long day, but once the energy got going, you kind of get that second wind, you get some food, and you're just like, all right, we're here. This is why we're here. No excuses. Don't get sleepy. And then on day one of the convention, the Thursday, I spent some time at the booth meeting people who listen to Trek Geeks and explaining to others what a podcast is. A lot of people don't even know what podcasts are. And we had little business cards for each show that had a QR code on the back to scan. And I got an autograph from Tawny Newsome, and she plays Beckett Mariner, or does the voice of Beckett Mariner for the animated series Lower Decks. And she was on Space Force with Mike Scott, you know who. And so that was really exciting. I gave her one of the embroideries I'd made, and she was like, I'm going to put it up in my office. Like, this is inspiring me to get back into it. She apparently used to do some embroidery, and she's like, instead of just scrolling on my phone, I should get back into it. So that's
awesome.
Super cool. And then I also got Todd Stashwick's autograph, and he played Captain Liam Shaw on season 3 of Picard. He was a standout character and actor, super nice guy. Instantly was like, have we met before? And I was like, I've reached out to you to be on my podcast Rewind. He's like, that's right, and so nice to meet you. And he was super friendly, and I was super excited for that. So my day one was off to a banger start for sure. So
sounds incredible.
It was incredible. So stay tuned. Keep listening for more updates on all the other parties and people I got to hang out with, and all my little celebrity friends I have now. No.
Oh, I can't wait to hear it. And I have to wait too now. I have to wait to hear all about it. So I'm just like you, listener, to keep listening.
Totally. I keep you on the edge of your seat.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear more.
But you're going to have a great time going back home to England and then going to Disney World. So
I am. Yes.
Tell me, what's the first thing you're going to do when you walk through those gates at Disney World?
So we're going to Magic Kingdom first, and Kieran's plan, my partner Kieran, his plan is we've already watched the Haunted Mansion film. He's watched it twice. He absolutely loves it. It's his favorite attraction. So something that he really wants to do is he wants to watch the film, then he wants to go on the ride. So that's what we'll probably be doing on our first day, if we can do it. I just want to be there. I'm going to be more relaxed this time. I've done all 6 parks. I've been to Disney World a lot, and I just want to take this one quite slow. But a big reason why I'm going is because I'm a huge fan of Guardians of the Galaxy, and I haven't been on the ride at Epcot, which is, I've been on the ride in Disneyland, which I know you have been on as well, which I love that ride. It's one of my favorites. Tower of Terror is one of my favorite attractions, and the blend of both just makes me so happy. So I'm really, really excited because everyone says how good the Epcot ride is. So I'm really, really excited. It's called Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind. So I'm pumped.
And the music is so good. The music is like, those soundtracks are phenomenal. I love those soundtracks.
Yes, so I'm really excited. I'm desperate to ask you more questions about the convention, but I'm not going to do it. I'm a big question asker, but I'm gonna hold back. But
what's you have one big question?
I just want to know what your favorite piece of merchandise was that you purchased or did you even purchase any merchandise?
I didn't purchase any merchandise for myself. I may have gotten you a couple of things to welcome you into the Trek world, but my money was spent on autographs, and I purchased 5.
Was there 5? And was there someone that you met? that you were just, because sometimes I think I said this before when I was speaking to you, that I'm quite a confident person, but I get extremely nervous when
Yeah.
I'm near celebrities or people that I admire.
Yeah. I'm
And
actually
sometimes,
quite proud of myself with how things went with Todd Stashwick, because when I got my autograph from him, I was able to like properly speak English, and that was good. And I was super excited that he like engaged in conversation and was like, "Oh yeah, we'll get the podcast. We'll make it happen once the the strike is over, and he can kind of talk freely about Star Trek." And then the next morning when I was working at the booth, I was wearing his Nerd Circus t-shirt, and he walked by with his wife and he saw it and he went, "Yeah," like pointed at me, and I was like, "Oh my God." And then later I was walking and I heard someone go, "Yeah, Nerd Circus." And I turned and it was his wife, Charity. And I was like, "Oh my God, this is weird, but I recognize you from your husband's social media. It's so nice to meet you." And we had like a great like 10-minute conversation. And she was talking about all the craziness back home with their animals and their kids. And she was looking forward to just relaxing by the pool. And she was super nice. And I was asking about Todd's, he's got a book out that's like a tiki drink menu like book, but it's all like Dungeons and Dragons theme. He's really into Dungeons and Dragons, and he actually co-made this book with the person who does Trader Sam's. So I was like, "Does he have any books with him?" And she's like, "I don't know, but you should ask him." So I messaged him and I was like, "Do you have any books with you? Your wife?" I ran into your beautiful wife and she said it was okay to message, because I don't want to be a weirdo, like, because I'm not a weirdo, right? I just really want to get the book. And he's like, "Oh, I don't have any on me." And then I saw him later again and he's like, "Oh yeah, my wife said she loved what you did with the t-shirt, because I cut it off the shoulder like this." And he's like, "You totally inspired her." And I was like, "Oh cool." So he gave me the link to buy the book, so I'm going to buy the book at some point for sure.
Yeah, because I was going to say, it's like Star Trek Tiki. I'm like, this is you. This is all you.
Yeah,
I
this
love
is
it.
Dungeons and Dragons, which I know nothing about because I'm very intimidated by it, but still, it's like, it's tiki themed and it's Trader Sam's. Like, what's not to want, right? Like, that's so cool. So I was just really excited that I was able to have like a couple of moments with him, because I really admired his acting. I thought he was such a cool guy. He seems so cool in real life. Him and his wife always post the coolest photos. They're at concerts. Like, they just seem like a really cool couple. And I was just like, oh, I'm so glad like I got a chance to like not be a total weirdo and come off like a just like a crazed fan. I was very much like, I really respect people's distance and privacy, but I just, it's so nice to see you. And so when I have the opportunity, I'm going to try and get him on the podcast. So I'm excited.
I love that. I'm so happy that you had that experience. That makes me really happy. You do have celebrity friends now, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, at least an acquaintance, if anything. Yeah. So before we get into kind of explaining things to all of our listeners, all 10, 20,000 of you, I'm sure, I'd like to do a quick little shout out to our sponsors, Fansets. Folks, we'd like to take a minute to thank our friends at Fansets for being the presenting sponsor of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. Lou, John, and their amazing crew are always working hard to put out the next best pin. I had the pleasure of spending some time with them in Las Vegas, and let me tell you, their booth was bumping.
I'm jealous. I wish I could see. Okay, so check out fansets.com and do some shopping. They have hundreds of Star Trek pins to choose from. Load up your cart, use our special discount code TrekGeeks in all caps, no spaces, to get 10% off your order. And if you're in the US and spend over $30, the shipping is free. Woo!
Oh, so nice. Fansets, our pins have character.
Love that.
All right. So, I mean, this is kind of our second attempt at a first recording, because we're playing around with getting some ideas and really building a podcast. So, first of all, listeners, don't be surprised if shit gets changed up down the road. We're just kind of, throwing out a bunch of ideas, seeing what sticks, seeing what's fun. What the plan is that we're starting Star Trek, the original series, from the beginning. We're doing a little synopsis of the episodes. We're going to chat about what we liked, what we didn't like, point out some of the painful misogyny and some of the beauty of the 60s. Sophie, you're going to give us a little bit of history about what was going on at the time, with a big focus on women's rights. I'm going to talk a little bit about what stands out as things I see later on in Trek, and just have some fun.
Yeah, and let us know what you like, what you don't like. Contact us. We'll let you know what our social media is at the end, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So let's start us off. Let's go, Sophie. What do you got for us?
Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
this is Sophie's Woman History segment. And this is to help us to understand the zeitgeist of when Star Trek was released. This particular episode, I am going to focus on contraception. So contraception is a product bodies with ovaries, egg cells, and a uterus can use to prevent pregnancy and to support with heavy or painful periods. Available now very easily, but this wasn't the case in the early 1960s. Issues like reproductive freedom and a woman's right to decide when or whether to have children were only just beginning to be openly discussed in the 1960s. In 1957, the FDA approved birth control pill, but only for severe menstrual distress. In 1960, the pill was approved for use as a contraceptive. Even so, the pill was illegal in some states and could only be prescribed only to married women for purposes of family planning, and not all pharmacies stocked it. Some of the opposed said oral contraceptives were immoral, promoted prostitution, and basically led to abortion.
Oh.
It wasn't until several years later that birth control was approved for use for all women, regardless of their marital status. In short, birth control meant a woman could complete her education, enter the workforce, and plan her own life. So in 1965, Griswold versus Connecticut made the pill available to married women in all states. Unmarried women had to wait until 1972. So I'm saying early 60s, but really 1972 is when unmarried women could access it, which just blows my mind, really. And so the first birth control clinic first opened in the US in 1960. So in 1916, it was shut down 11 days later, and the owner, Margaret Sanger, spent 30 days in jail.
Oh my God.
In the making of Star Trek, it stated that birth control was practiced on board the Enterprise, but it was never discussed in any episode of the original series because the censors wouldn't allow it. So there you go. What do you think about that?
Wow. And it's not that long ago. And
I know.
It's just absolutely mind-boggling that,
I know.
the fight was so hard and it's going backwards again now.
Yeah. And even just for use of just heavy painful periods, I cannot believe, like you said, that was my first thought was this really isn't that long ago. And there is so much misogyny in Star Trek. And I just think it's really helpful to just have that commentary on what's happening in women's history at that particular time, because I know when we first started recording it, I just really wanted to understand how people viewing it when it aired, how they interpreted it. Is it just now we're in this society now that we're reflecting on it, we're like, hey, this is quite uncomfortable, this is difficult to watch. But yeah, very interesting.
Absolutely. I love it. Thank you for that little bit of history. That is great. Yeah, so we're going to talk quickly. We're going to do some little synopses of Man Trap and Charlie X. So I'll start us off with the Man Trap. And in this one, the Enterprise is visiting a planet, M113. And when Kirk and McCoy are going there to meet a scientist and his wife, it turns out that the wife is one of Dr. McCoy's past lovers, Nancy Crater. And she's a handsome woman. And McCoy sees her as like the beautiful woman that she used to be, but everyone else is seeing her as like a gray-haired, like older, still attractive, in my opinion, woman. But it's, obviously we're off to a strange start. But also other members of the Enterprise that are there are seeing different women. So as the viewer, we're like, okay, so this is like a shapeshifter, or this is just something weird. We don't really know what's going on. But then it gets worse. People start dying with no explanation, except there's like these weird suction tentacle marks on their bodies. And we find out later, hickeys. And we find out later too that there's like a depletion of salt from their bodies, and everyone's like, that doesn't make any sense. And the killer is shape-shifting around, so it gets onto the Enterprise, and it shows as a different character who's interacting with Uhura, and it scares some plants, and it's like all over the place, and we have no idea who's who and who's the bad guy. and Kirk and Spock and McCoy all work to investigate to find out who this killer is that's taken all the salt and why. And at one point, even McCoy is left not only totally confused about his ex-lover and who are, and what they are, but he's duplicated by the monster. So you're sitting around the table knowing that McCoy isn't McCoy, and they're trying to figure out where the monster is. And the tension is soaring all the way to the climactic, awkward ending where Spock smacks the hell out of the woman until she becomes the poor, endangered species salt vampire that is the last of its kind who has been living on this planet, and then they kill it. Womp womp.
End.
End scene.
So we are talking about the man trap, and we're also talking about Charlie X. So well done, Sarah. That was an excellent synopsis, much better than mine's going to be. So I'm going to do a synopsis of Charlie X. So Charlie Evans is a teenage boy who has been raised by aliens since infancy. He knows little about humankind, so when he comes aboard the Enterprise, he is now truly in an alien environment. He has few social skills, and while he is very intelligent, he has the emotional maturity of a toddler and is quick to anger when he does not get his way. That is very much in the episode. He also has great power and can change matter into any form. He takes an interest in Yeoman Rand without realizing the biological drives that are at work. Fed up with being told what he can and cannot do, he decides to challenge Kirk's authority directly. So this is the third episode as of Canadian streaming services. So the Man Trap was number 2. Yes, and this is number 3. We haven't done number 1. We have done number 1.
We're saving it for later. It was a little bit of a rough start, so we'll get to the cage at another time.
Yes,
that was awesome. Yay, thank you. Some likes, some dislikes. I have 3 likes and 3 dislikes in total, not for each, because sometimes they kind of overlap. So I'm just going to say straight up what I liked. I liked Charlie X. In a general, I thought it was a great episode. I was fascinated by the alien race who raised him and was wanting to know more about who they were. And I just found the whole episode to just be like enjoyable. I also loved the colors of the lighting in like the medical bay and on the ship, and just the general like 60s like ambiance. It's just a really pretty set to look at, and I've never really fully appreciated it. So that's going to be a big thing for me, is watching episodes going on, just like enjoying the background visuals of everything on the set. And lastly, I'm kind of enjoying these early episodes with Spock, especially because you can tell that they're really unsure about what they're going to do with that character, because the episodes are a little bit out of order. They're obviously playing around with some ideas and getting new ideas about how the characters are going to be, or their costumes. It's a trial and error. So it's kind
just
of
like us.
Spock. Exactly. It's totally true. So it's kind of fun to see Spock in a way that I wasn't really anticipating early on. Yeah.
So some of my likes for Charlie X. So as a first-time watcher, I felt a lot of tension. I was really kind of worried about the outcome. And I thought it was good because this isn't a monster or a creature. Mm-hmm. Obviously, he is very different and he has these skills, but not like a creature. It's basically a prepubescent teen, and trust me, they are scary. You do not know what to expect.
Totally.
Maybe I was a bit scared and I felt a lot of tension because it gave me PTSD flashbacks of my lesson, because that is literally how they look at me. But I really did enjoy Charlie X. Another like was Spock's song. The quote, "Girls in space, be wary." When I was talking to my mum about this episode on the phone, I explained it and said, "Yep, Spock's playing his instrument," and she laughed out loud. And you just used the word horny, and that is the word I will use to describe Star Trek always. It is all very horny. There is a lot of sexual tension in space. It's unreal. And I really liked the butt plug chess. I don't know why the butt plug chess has stuck with me. I loved the way that the chessboard was laid out, and it went up instead of being flat, and the pieces kind of looked look like butt plugs. Also, the melting effect. So Charlie X does a
Oh
melting
yeah.
effect on them. It really does look dated, but I always feel like it ends up being more effective. Like I'm really enjoying it. I like it. Yeah. Do you want to do some dislikes for Charlie X?
I have dislikes in general, yeah. I really don't like the yeoman secretary role that they have on the ship or the way that the male crewmen behave towards her or them. A lot of grab assing and just very Mad Men era boys will be boys. And it just kind of
Mm,
is a rank or a role that I don't really enjoy. And thankfully you don't see it much in other iterations of Star Trek. I also don't like that they kind of just killed an endangered species and didn't really provide Charlie X with amnesty when he was crying that he didn't want to go back with aliens. It just seemed kind of rude, frankly. I mean, I'm used to
mm.
TNG and I'll talk about it later, but I just found that they were both kind of, well, at least for the salt vampire, it was a very abrupt kind of like, well, this is the only option we got, so bye, we're gonna kill you now. And the other thing I
Yeah.
didn't like was the victimization of women. It's an old, tired, and cheap way to develop or involve female characters in TV. And I think that this is just the start of a lot of that. And I'll just have to get over it because I'm still enjoying everything. It's just something I noted that I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this is something I'm used to seeing that in TNG as well. So I'll suck it up.
Yeah, it's really hard because we're doing episode ratings later and misogyny ratings later. And yes, there is a lot of misogyny, but I am still really enjoying it. And I'm kind of like, why am I enjoying this? But I am really, really enjoying it. So my dislikes for Charlie X was Kirk's puberty lesson. So
Mm,
Charlie is ultimately a young teen going through puberty. I feel personally, as an educator in this field, that he needs to learn about boundaries and consent, but a lot of the stuff really he just needs affection and guidance. And the thing that I felt is just Kirk doesn't seem comfortable in that
hmm
role. That's what I'm gathering from that. So
hmm
too, you mentioned it, the bum slap. So Charlie X is giving me serious red flags throughout the entire episode. The bum slap was really, really awful and kind of uncomfortable. Star Trek is really good for the time because I feel like it is saying that the bum smacking isn't good
hmm
to a random female. But the way that it's framed and discussed is really strange to me. And I didn't really like the way that they gendered the issue. Why do men have to be the ones to explain why this is bad? Like Yeoman doesn't have to explain the issue, but she's very capable of doing so. I just feel like it's pushing this stereotypical gender roles for men, the guidance from males, the father figure roles when Kirk isn't actually that good in that role. So the third dislike was the laughing mask. Just no, I didn't like the laughing mask. Just Google what it looks like. I didn't like it. And I was walking the other day and I was really relaxed and someone was laughing really loud. And I just felt like Charlie X. I was like, no, laughing. I was like, I wish I could have done that. But I like it when people laugh. But I was very relaxed in that moment.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. So you mentioned that we do have some ratings, and we have
Yes.
a misogyny rating and we have an episode rating. So why don't you give us your numbers for the man trap?
You're out of your Vulcan mind, Spock.
So mine for the man trap. So my misogyny rating for the man trap was 6 out of 10. So I was thinking maybe this is a bit too high, but Lahora's first line, the grabby plant, personal yeoman comment, crappy cornflowers, and Spock repeatedly slapping women. So that's why I rated it a 6 out of 10. The episode rating for the man trap, though, I liked it. I'm just getting into Star Trek and I really appreciate the lighting, the costumes, the mid-century vibes, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed Charlie X. I felt a lot more tension in Charlie X. It felt a bit more intimidating, and I just ended up feeling sorry for the salt vampire.
And
So,
what number did
yeah,
you give it?
I gave it a 5 out of
Give it
10
a 5 out of 10.
for the man trap.
The man trap.
Yes.
Yeah, I had different numbers. You were worried you went too high on the misogyny. I gave it an 8 out of 10.
Whoa.
I just felt like from the moment it starts referencing, there's like, it just seems like a real subtle reference to like women's beauty being attached to age was such a thing. And as a woman who's 43, I don't like thinking about like you lose your looks when you get older. I'm like, no, you don't. You just become beautiful in different ways. And I thought the Spock attacking the salt vampire and the just overall tone of luring the different female characters by the shapeshifter as though they'd be easy prey. I just thought this is a rough start. I'm going to give it an 8. Maybe it's too high, but that's where I went. And for the episode in general, I gave it a 7.
Mm.
It was fine. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good, just classic whodunit mystery with a monster. But I kind of just felt bad for the salt vampire in the end.
Yeah, I don't mind. So what did you give your rating for Charlie X? What was your misogyny rating for Charlie X?
This one I gave a 7 out of 10. My controversial opinion, but I'm going to say it anyways, is yes, there are creepy red flags all throughout, and that's on the writers, not so much on Charlie. Now, I'm not
Mm,
saying he has any excuses, but this is his first time in his whole life where he's met a woman or other people, frankly, and he doesn't understand right or wrong, and therefore he's not purposefully being a creep. He just doesn't know anything. So he needs to be taught. So I have a little bit more sympathy for him just in the sense that he's been alone by himself forever and now he's finally out in public around women at a very awkward age with powers. So hopefully if he was taught properly and he was able to behave himself, then we would give this a 0 out of 10. But if he
mm.
became even more of a creep and took advantage of his powers, then this would be a 10 out of 10. But I mean, it's just the story in general. I mean, there's just the butt slapping and all that that's the writers writing it and definitely has misogyny. But the actual character, I felt really bad for him, to be honest. I'm very
Y-
sympathetic to these first couple of episodes.
yeah. What was your
Yeah.
episode rating for Charlie X?
I gave it a 9 out of 10. I love this episode. I thought it was great.
Yeah. It was a good one. So my misogyny rating for Charlie X was an 8 out of 10. I felt like this deserved a high rating for the quote, no right way to hit a woman. It was just creepy when Kirk said it and Charlie X in general. But like you say, it's the writers. But he played the acting. He was good. Like it came across as he felt like he was owed a woman. That's what was quite creepy to me. And if you don't like him, he will make you disappear. So boundary red flag issues like walking into Yeoman's room without asking, being very forceful, the woman turning into an old lady, like that's the worst thing that can happen to us. And just toxic masculinity, gendering the issue of the bum slapping. So my episode rating for Charlie X was a 7 out of 10. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought a lot about it after, and although there is a lot of misogyny with the character of Charlie X, it was very interesting. It includes a message of a young person who wants to learn and grow, but I think he came to the wrong place and then they were like, bye, see you, you're creepy. I didn't like that. It made me sad. It made me feel sorry for him. So yeah.
I think we have some fun goofs and some fun trivia that we got off of Internet Movie Database for these 2 episodes. All right. So, although this was the first episode to air on NBC, it was actually the 6th episode produced. NBC chose to air this episode first because they felt that it had more action than any of the first 5 episodes, and it also featured a monster. That's interesting. Yeah. Who doesn't love a good monster?
Yeah. So the model of the USS Enterprise used here now resides in the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C.
Oh, we have to do a road trip. And lastly, this is the first aired episode where McCoy says, he's dead, Jim. The first episode actually produced where he says this line would have been the enemy within. What a classic line.
Yeah, so now we've got some goofs for the man trap. When the creature as Green confronts Yeoman Rand at the elevator, Rand takes 2 bites from one of the celery-like pieces on the food plate. Moments later in the biology lab, after she placed the plate in front of Sulu, Green stares down at it, and in the close-up, the same celery pieces appear whole and not partially eaten.
Uh-oh, a continuity error. At the beginning of the show, Kirk picks up a bunch of flowers. Actually, it's just some scrub brush. And for McCoy to give to Nancy. Kirk then throws them on the ground. The camera pulls back and the flowers are nowhere to be seen. They should be lying on the ground.
Those flowers were horrible.
No, pretty bad.
Awful, yes. So when the plant Gertrude is frightened by Green, it fronds extend and shows a hand inside a glove. It was very dated. Yes.
Very dated. Yeah, they didn't have the fancy special effects for that flower. Not just
yet.
For Charlie X, a little bit of trivia. In the original script, Uhura was to amuse the crew by performing as a trained mimic, imitating Spock and other officers. This was changed to her singing a song about Spock, followed by a spoof of the 18th century Scottish song, Charlie is My Darling, the best known version of which is attributed to Robbie Burns in order to highlight Nichelle Nichols' singing talent.
True to his training as a method actor, Robert Walker Jr. chose to remain in his dressing room and not interact with any members of the cast, as this would help the characterization of a strange, aloof person. So he's playing Charlie X, and it came across. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love those little stories about that type of style for acting. Yeah, that's cool. William Shatner had his chest shaved for this episode. In the next episode to be aired, Where No Man Has Gone Before, he clearly has a hairy chest, as that episode was filmed a good year before this one. That's a big gap.
Here's some goofs for Charlie X.
Mm-hmm.
When the captain of the Ataris is trying to warn Kirk of Charlie's ability, Kirk is in a corridor talking to Charlie about not slapping girls on the butt. He says, I'm on the way to the bridge now, and gets on the turbo lift wearing his usual yellow shirt. When he arrives on the bridge, he is wearing a green tunic.
He did a quick change like Superman in that turbo lift. Charlie's being examined by Bone, but when we cut to a close-up on the display screen, we see a reflection of Charlie standing up, staring at something off camera.
Yeah. Spock can be seen blinking when he's frozen by Charlie.
I noticed that one.
I didn't notice any of them. I don't notice any of them.
Oh, I love it. All right, now another segment called the Sara Hour. Don't worry, it's not going to be an hour. I just thought it'd be a really fun title to call it. The only thing I want to talk on here are 2 things. The first one, as somebody who has already said now probably twice in this episode, I felt for these characters, and I didn't really like some of the endings that they received, which was death or being sent back to the place where they didn't want to go. It made me think a lot about the Prime Directive, and the Prime Directive is the code to which Starfleet obeys, and it's got such rules as we will not interfere with races that have never had contact with aliens before, pre-warp civilizations. We will, it's kind of as you would as an ambassador to out, like, we're going to have some rules so we don't, do stupid things. And I did a little bit of looking up to see where did the Prime Directive kind of appear in the Star Trek timeline. And I found out that it was first mentioned as an idea in the TV show Enterprise, which was the series in 1999 to 2001-ish, 2002, that takes place before the original series. So they bring it up as like, maybe we should write some of these things down that we shouldn't do. And it came up again in an episode or 2 of Discovery and in Strange New Worlds and in season 1 of the original series, but a little bit later on from what we're watching. So I found that really interesting that technically when these episodes happen, there should be a Prime Directive. But I guess my opinion is that they're just not really following it maybe how I think they would. But I think a lot of that might be that I'm really kind of comparing Kirk to Picard. Because in my opinion, if Charlie X was on the ship with Captain Picard and he was begging for, like, please don't send me back to this planet, I think there would have been a lot more negotiation about what could we do for this person. Same with the salt vampire. This is a creature that's dying, that's just trying to stay alive. It's starving. It's one of a kind. Like, is there not something else you could do? Could you not trap it and give it a humane life somewhere on a planet with all the salt it could want and maybe give it a chance? But they didn't do that on these ones. So I found that just kind of interesting. I couldn't help but compare, like, what would Picard do? So that's one thing I noticed. And the other thing was the Thasians, the alien race that had given Charlie X their powers. It really kind of made me think of Q. And Q is a great, people call him a villain. I think he's just more of a rascal, but it's a character that's a very omnipotent, can do anything at any time, anywhere, non-corporeal being that shows up in multiple series of Star Trek, and it just causes absolute mayhem, can change things with the snap of his fingers. So I was kind of wondering if maybe the idea for Q was based off of the green floating head that took Charlie X back. So who knows?
Yeah, these two are kind of interesting because you do feel a lot of sympathy for the creature. Like the salt vampire just needs love as much as it needs salt. It's just you when you wake up from a hangover. That's all it needs. Just some attention.
Perfect way to describe it. I love it.
Just some salt. Yeah. Yeah, I'm really interested because I don't know much about Next Gen. I've never watched Next Gen. I've never watched the new one. So I'm really interested in your hour, Sarah's hour, just to kind of understand how you think it would have been done differently. So that's kind of where we're going to go with the end of the podcast. So I love that.
It's awesome. Super fun. Thank you. And that is episode 1 of Deflowered, where we covered episodes 1 and 2 of the original series, kind of, sort of. Are they really number 1 or 2? It depends on where you look. Tune in next time when we break down the next 2 episodes we watched according to Netflix Canada, which were Where No Man Has Gone Before and The Naked Time.
Yes. If you enjoyed this podcast and you would like to hear more or learn about ways to support the Trek Geeks Podcast Network, check them out on Twitter at Trek Geeks or their website trekgeeks.com, where you will find tons of information about the other podcasts on the network or how you can become a Patreon subscriber.
That's right. There's also a place on the Trek Geeks website where you can leave us a voicemail. Do it. Tell us if you're enjoying the new show. We'd love to hear from you. You can also message us on X/Twitter at TG, as in Trek Geeks, _Deflowered. Until next time, thank you to Bill and Dan, to 5 Year Mission for the fantastic music, our sponsors, Fansets, and all of you for coming along and bearing witness to the deflowering of Sophie. Does that sound really dirty?
It does. It sounds
love
dirty.
It. Stay tuned for more. Until next time, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Coconut.